All right. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good start to their weekend. Today we will be discussing. We're starting a new chapter in second canto, chapter 8 in second canto. I believe the seventh canto was just finished yesterday. And this chapter is entitled Questions by Parikshit. Now, Parikshit Maharaj has asked a series of questions, right? Even before this. And then in the previous cantos and previous chapters, and cantos, Sukadev Goswami has answered them in in specific themes and segments. And so the Q&A is continuing with him asking questions. And today we'll just, he'll pose the questions. Parikshit Maharaj will pose the questions, and then Sukadev Goswami and Narada Muni will answer those later in the Bhagavatam. So we'll kick off with verse 1 again, with chapter 8 in second canto. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so again, it's Canto 2, Chapter 8, Verse 1. The chapter is entitled Questions by Parikshit Maharaj. Okay. Rajo Vacha Brahmana Kodito Brahman Gunakyane Gunasya Yasma Yatha Praha Narado Deva Darshana. The word by word. Raja, the king, Vacha, inquired, Brahmana, by Lord Brahma, Kodita, being instructed, Brahman, O learned Brahmana, Guna Akhyane, in narrating the transcendental qualities, Agunasya, of the Lord, who is without material qualities, Cha, and, Yasmai, and whom, Yatha, as much as, Praha, explained, Narada Muni, Deva Darshana, one whose audience is as good as that of any demigod. Translation. King Parikshit inquired from Sukadev Goswami, how did Narada Muni, whose hearers are as fortunate as those instructed by Lord Brahma, explain the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is without material qualities, and before whom did he speak? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Devarishi Narada was directly instructed by Brahmaji, who was also directly instructed by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the instructions imparted by Narada to his various disciples are as good as those of the Supreme Lord. That is the way of understanding Vedic knowledge. It comes down from the Lord by disciplic succession, and this transcendental knowledge is distributed to the world by this descending process. There is no chance, however, to receive the Vedic knowledge from mental speculators. Therefore, wherever Narada Muni goes, he represents himself as authorized by the Lord, and his appearance is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the disciplic succession, which strictly follows the transcendental instruction, is the bona fide chain of disciplic succession. And the test for such bona fide spiritual masters is that there should be no difference between the instruction of the Lord originally imparted to his devotee and that which is imparted by the authority in the line of disciplic succession. How Narada Muni distributed the transcendental knowledge of the Lord will be explained in later cantos. It will appear also that the Lord existed prior to the material creation, and therefore his transcendental name, quality, etc., do not represent any material quality. Whenever, therefore, the Lord is described as aguna, or without any quality, it does not mean that he has no quality, but that he has no material quality, such as the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, as the conditioned souls have. He is transcendental to all material conceptions, and thus is described as aguna. We'll read the next verse also. This is verse 2.82. Etad veditum ichchami tattvam tattva vidambara hare adbhuta virasya katha loka sumangala. Word by word. Etat, this. Veditam, to understand. Ichchami, I wish. Tattvam, truth. Tattva vidam, of those who are well versed in the absolute truth. Vara, O best. Hare, of the Lord. Adbhuta viryasya, of the one who possesses wonderful potencies. Katha, narrations. Loka, for all planets. Sumangala, auspicious. Translation. The king said, I wish to know, narrations concerning the Lord who possesses wonderful potencies are certainly auspicious for living beings in all planets. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, which is full of narrations of the activities of the Supreme Lord, is auspicious for all living beings residing in every planet. One who takes it as belonging to a particular sect is certainly mistaken. Srimad Bhagavatam is certainly a very clear, very dear scripture for all the devotees of the Lord. But it is auspicious even for the non-devotees also, because it explains that even the non-devotees hovering under the spell of material energy can be delivered from such clutches if they hear the narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam with devotion and attention from the right source, representing the Lord by disciplic succession. Okay, so these are the two verses that we'll discuss today. So before we get into it, I wanted to appreciate this quality of inquisitiveness by Parikshit Maharaj. It's always talked about how that is one of this quality of inquisitiveness is such a critical quality for us to progress in our Krishna consciousness. It's encouraged to ask questions and clarify our doubts if we want to make progress in Krishna consciousness. And King Parikshit continues to set that example, and it's not just because he's being spoken to in the assembly, but it's something that all the scholars, even scholars, would ask questions to make sure they get their things clarified. So I just wanted to call that quality out for King Parikshit. He asks so many questions, which facilitates the discussion, and in Bhagavatam, and when Arjuna asks questions in Bhagavad Gita also. So in the verse, for the first verse of the first verse, 2.8.1, Parikshit Maharaj is asking, how did Narada Muni, who's such a great soul, explain the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is without, and he's talking about the Lord who has no material qualities. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking, like, how did Narada Muni actually convey such a complex topic? And who did even tell? Like, who could even understand this topic? And then he says, in the translation also, it says that whoever hears from Narada Muni is as fortunate as if they heard from Lord Brahma. That's the fundamental question he's asking. How did someone as great as Narada Muni explain the qualities of the Lord, and who did he tell, right? And then in the next verse, Parikshit Maharaj says, kind of gives a reason as to why he's asking this question. He's saying that he's saying that I want to know, because any narration concerning the Lord is very auspicious. So I personally want to know, because it's such an auspicious thing. How did Narada Muni do this, basically? So if we sort of unpack the purport a bit, Prabhupada is talking about how this knowledge went from Krishna himself. He told it to Brahma, and then Brahma told it to Narada Muni. And so this is why it's being said that the instructions imparted by Narada Muni to his various disciples, it's as good as what the Supreme Lord would say, because it's coming in this disciplic succession. This theme of disciplic succession in these two verses keeps getting reiterated in the purport. It keeps coming up. And so in the first sentence, Prabhupada is saying, even if you hear from Narada Muni, it's as good as hearing from the Lord himself, because it's coming down in this disciplic succession. And Prabhupada sort of makes this very, very strong statement, and a very key statement. He says, you cannot receive knowledge from mental speculators. He continues to sort of stress on that in his various lectures and various verses. So this sentence particularly caught my attention. So we'll discuss that a bit more. Like, why can we not receive knowledge from mental speculators, and how I've personally dealt with this when I was in college, when people the way people would interpret religion and God can be very different if it's not coming down in disciplic succession. And then Prabhupada makes this point about the Lord existed prior to any material creation. And so he's saying that because Parikshit Maharaj is saying that, look, the Lord has no material qualities. And so Prabhupada is saying that, it's not that the Lord was created when the material creation took place. The Lord was existing even before that. And so the Lord is beyond just material qualities. He doesn't have these qualities of goodness, passion, ignorance, these modes that we all go through. It's not something that the Lord, goes through, which is why he's described as aguna, without qualities, without material qualities. And then verse 2 that we just read, it's very timely in one sense, because Bhadra Purnima just passed, and we were talking about the glories of hearing and distributing Srimad Bhagavatam, and that verse is just emphasizing that, right? That the first point is that anyone can hear Srimad Bhagavatam. It's auspicious for even a non-devotee, which is why the SP sets are being even distributed to non-devotees, and how auspicious that can be for them. And then the other part that Parikshit Maharaj is saying is that when you hear the Lord's pastimes, it's very auspicious for them. And there's so many times in the Bhagavatam when a pastime has been described to its fullest. At the end, it's often said, if you hear this pastime even once, you will attain the love for Krishna. And so Parikshit Maharaj is again emphasizing that in this second verse. So it's a very timely verse, given that we just passed the celebrations of Bhadra Purnima and things like that. So there's 3 different topics I wanted to maybe touch upon as we think about this, unpacking these 2 verses, specifically in verse 1. So again, Parikshit Maharaj is very carefully choosing his words when he's asking these questions. There's a reason behind every single Sanskrit word in his questions, because it has a very particular meaning behind it. And so the first one, the first topic that I figured it'd be important to talk about is Narada Muni. He's specifically asking, how did Narada Muni do this, right? And for some background, Lord Brahma, when he had passed this knowledge down to Narada Muni, when he presented the Vedas and Bhagavatam, one of them, those knowledges to Narada Muni, Lord Brahma had specifically asked Narada Muni to preach this knowledge in a way that everyone that hears it develops devotion. It wasn't just like just utter these words and study it academically. He said, no, speak it in a way that everyone develops devotion. And Brahma, told Narada Muni to not just preach it, but to also internally, internalize it and develop it even within his own, for his own Krishna consciousness. So that's how Brahma had instructed that to Narada Muni. And if you notice, Narada Muni is the only character that appears in every single canto of the Bhagavatam. He's passing this knowledge down to every single, any major character in every canto. And he's presenting or explaining Srimad Bhagavatam, bhakti in a way that whoever hears him becomes a bhakta, they become devotee. So Brahma had asked Narada Muni to again preach in a very certain way, and that's what Narada Muni ends up doing. So Parikshit Maharaj describes Narada Muni with these two terms in his question, right? The first term is Brahmana Kodita, which literally is translated to Lord, by Lord Brahma being instructed. So he was Narada Muni, who was instructed by Lord Brahma. That's how he's describing. That's one quality he's describing him as. And the second quality he calls out for Narada Muni is Deva Darshana, which is literally translated as Deva Darshana is translated in here as one whose audience is as good as that of any demigod. And another meaning of that is one who's taken darshan of the Lord, Deva Darshan, so who's taken darshan of the Deva. And so those are two very specific terms that Narada Muni is being described as. And the reason, Parikshit Maharaj uses those terms in describing Narada Muni in this very simple question, or this very fundamental question, is because a teacher is supposed to have those two qualities. One, he himself has heard from a guru. So in this case, Narada Muni has heard from Lord Brahma, and someone who's fixed on the spiritual platform. And Narada Muni has seen the Lord. He's gotten his darshan. And so Narada Muni has those two exemplary qualities, and therefore Parikshit Maharaj in his question is giving that credibility to Narada Muni. He is the person to hear from because of these two qualities, and he uses these two terms to describe him in asking that question. And again, like I said, this theme of a teacher who's heard in disciplic succession keeps coming up. And Narada Muni, took that conception that he heard from Brahma and he grew it internally in his heart, which is very critical. And so Brahmana Kodita, enlightened by Lord Brahma, is the first quality that Parikshit Maharaj uses, and it's again being emphasized much more so. So that's sort of the first topic I wanted to touch upon. Why is Narada Muni the critical character being described, and why is it that Parikshit Maharaj wants to specifically hear about how Narada Muni described Lord, who doesn't have any material qualities? So let's maybe not talk about the statement is made, the Lord is without material qualities. And how did Narada Muni describe transcendental qualities to someone? Like, how is that even possible? And so what's interesting is that many examples and descriptions are given in Bhagavatam where the Lord's qualities are described. If you read, various chapters, there's a lot of detail and actually that's described the Lord's qualities. And they're described in a way so we can understand them and somewhat find some relation and be able to relate to Krishna's qualities. So they're described in a way where we can understand them, we can understand what this quality means of Krishna's and maybe somewhat relate to it. But he's making the claim here that Krishna is agunasya, meaning he doesn't have actually material qualities. And so one devotee to Srila Prabhupada had said, Krishna is black. And this black devotee had in fact told Prabhupada and said, hey, Krishna is black. And Prabhupada said, Krishna is not black like you. Prabhupada was making the statement that yes, Krishna is black, but his that quality is different than like the black color in this material world. For example, when Krishna's lotus eyes are talked about, like this description of lotus is given, they're actually different than how Krishna's eyes are in reality. Or when we read the translation of Damodarshtakam, Lord Damodar's features are described, his lips are described, for example. But they're just references for us to understand how Krishna's form could be seen or how it could be perceived. And so it's said that when we hear these qualities about Krishna, we think we're meditating on this Krishna, but Krishna shows his mercy and lets us see him like that, because that is the level we can relate with. But in reality, Krishna's qualities are transcendental and something that, again, is very much outside of this material realm, right? So when these qualities are talked about, like Krishna's lotus eyes, or Krishna's reddish lips, for example, in Damodarshtakam, they're just mere references for us to somehow understand what Krishna might look like. And so in this purport, in this translation, when Parikshit Maharaj is saying, wait, Krishna is, has a mature quality, so how did Narada Muni actually convey the transcendental qualities to all the hearers? And so this is why he's asking this question, like, how did he manage to do this? And of course, we hear this later and in the later verses and how he does this, but this is why he's asking the question. It's trying to explain something that's very inconceivable to a regular set of audience. And in fact, Parikshit Maharaj is implying that, all of us, we only have experience in mundane and material qualities, right? So this is why he's asking the question, who did he speak to? So it's not just how did he convey all this knowledge, but who did he even tell this to? Who's capable of understanding this subject matter? And so, Parikshit Maharaj is finding this very interesting in terms of who can even understand this? Who is Narada Muni selecting to speak to? And that, again, all that is answered in the rest of the book, the rest of this chapter. This is just setting the stage of why he's asking these questions. And what's interesting is distributing, Srimad Bhagavatam is auspicious for everyone, meaning whoever hears about it is auspicious. But some of these topics, some of these topics are can be difficult to understand, and so that's why Parikshit Maharaj is wondering, who had the capability to hear such complex topics. In fact, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote this essay on what it means to take initiation, and there he describes when should someone have a spiritual master, like, or get a guru. And he says, guru is only meant for one who understands the abject futility of material life. Someone who wants to ask these deep questions. And so when Narada Muni is explaining this knowledge to someone, again, Parikshit Maharaj is wondering who has these deep questions, who is in this capacity to hear from a guru like Narada Muni. And so this is why he says, to whom did he speak to this knowledge? Yeah, so those are the two topics I wanted to cover from that verse. And of course, this third topic that I wanted to spend some time on is, again, hearing in disciplic succession. So Prabhupada makes this very clear point in that first verse, which is, it's vital to hear in disciplic succession versus from hearing from mental speculators, in today's day and age. And so there was a couple of sort of stories or examples that came to my mind when Prabhupada made this this point specifically. There was a story when a couple of years ago in America, the Me Too movement was blowing up. There was a scandal with some Hollywood director or producer had been accused of mingling with many women and making bad harassment actions. And so that, I think his name was Harvey Weinstein, and basically it spurred this huge Me Too movement in Hollywood across America. And it was called Me Too because any woman who would say, I was also harassed, they would say Me Too. And so it became this big wave of movement in America a couple, 4 or 5 years ago. And so someone on social media had taken a picture of when all the gopis were taking a bath, and Lord Krishna had, there's a pastime where he'd stolen the clothes of the gopis, and he'd climbed up on a tree, and some random person basically took this picture and he was put these voice bubbles next to each gopi who was saying Me Too. Basically, he was portraying this person was portraying on social media that these gopis were abused in one sense by Krishna. And in a day and age where social media can be very explosive, and I mean, I work for a social media company, and I see how it can be very explosive, and it can be very dangerous. That person was mentally concocting this image and was portraying it across the world. And so that's what mental speculators do today, right? They pick up one thing without any context, without any backing, and they portray it in a very negative way. But there's actually pages and pages and books on Krishna's relationship with the gopis, or the whole Rasa Leela, for example. And so it's so critical to read and hear any knowledge in disciplic succession was the point that was being made, versus using this mental speculation. And again, mental speculation is typically something where we concoct our understanding of things based on what we see or we hear, instead of reading something or hearing something in the disciplic succession. And so, in fact, in Bhagavad Gita, right, when Arjuna is asking all these questions, Krishna says very clearly, it's verse chapter 4, verse 2 in Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam Imam Rajarsoy Vidu, Sakalina Mahata Yogo Nashta Parantapa. The translation is, the supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So Krishna himself says that the supreme science is received through the chain of, disciplic succession, and that's how one was to understand it, only through disciplic succession. A common example is given is if you take a mango tree, and the mangoes are at the top of the tree, for example. There's almost a ladder of men or people that, one person is climbing or standing on the top of another person is standing on the top of another person, and that's how they're getting a mango. And then that mango is passed carefully down to the person at the bottom of the tree, so that person at the bottom of the tree can take that mango, and that mango has to be kept in a very delicate, firm, firm position, so the mango doesn't get ruined as it's passed down from the top of a tree to the bottom of a tree by a ladder of men. And that's how disciplic succession is often described. That knowledge is taken as is from top to bottom without it being damaged. And that's what verse 2 in chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says it comes down. That's how the kings receive that knowledge. And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was Prabhupada's spiritual master, one time he had ran into these people who claimed themselves as Lord Nityananda's descendants, like in the bloodline. They said, hey, we were part of Lord Nityananda's family. And so therefore only we are capable of understanding Krishna consciousness. That's the statement they made to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And so he said, no, actually someone who's actually received the knowledge in that succession is only capable of explaining or understanding Krishna consciousness. Not just because you're in the bloodline or the seminal line, like you're his descendants, that's enough to be able to explain and convey Krishna consciousness. So again, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes this very, again, really this strong statement that it's not enough to just come in, your bloodline for you to have that knowledge. And we see that in real life when you had kings and queens, and the person that would take up the throne next would have to be their descendant. And many times their descendants are not really capable of ruling the kingdom. They were quite incapable, in fact, at many times, and those kingdoms would fall or break apart. And so, yeah, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is emphasizing this importance of only hearing that disciplic succession, not just seminal bloodlines. And the last thing that I was thinking about is how is this applied in the day-to-day? When Srila Prabhupada had come to America and he set up the initial temples in America, or the initial devotees he made, he was doing that, but at the same time, he was spreading the movement across the world. So there's when Prabhupada set up the storefront in New York, one of the next few temples he went and opened up was San Francisco. So he went to California and opened up San Francisco shortly after. But his disciples that were in New York asked Prabhupada, what do we do? You just opened up the storefront. You're going and opening this new temple in California. What are we to do here with people that come here? We're just picking up this knowledge. What are we supposed to do? And so Prabhupada instructed them, just read from the books and present from what you've heard from me or from the books, because that is what's come in disciplic succession. So there's actually accounts of Prabhupada disciples where they talk about how that was such a helping aid for them. Instead of concocting their own presentations, their own topical things, they would just present what they've heard or what they've read to new people that would come to the storefront in New York. And that's how they would continue while Prabhupada was not there. Often Prabhupada was traveling, and that's how they would continue. In like the first, 2-3 months of Prabhupada just arriving, he had made in New York, he had made disciples, and they were preaching the next moment because Prabhupada would go and open up a new temple or a new place. And so again, that's the power of conveying knowledge through disciplic succession. And in the material sense, oftentimes there's a lot of credibility given to colleges like Harvard or Yale or these different schools. And often it's done, that's done because there is a track record of famous people that have gone to those colleges and they've done really well for themselves academically or professionally or whatever it might be. And in the material sense, there is a lot of emphasis on giving credibility to what's coming down in a successive manner. And so it's important to do that in Krishna consciousness as well. Otherwise, it can be very dangerous or deadly when you're just concocting things on your own. And I've had my fair share of sort of interactions in college. When I was in college, that's the time when everyone's introspecting, and everyone's still introspecting, but college is definitely a time where people are trying to figure out where they what their spiritual life might look like, and people that are often introspecting or thinking without any guide in the way can be, they're often very confused, and they often can lose their way and becoming more confused because they're not sort of receiving. And I'm not saying just for Krishna consciousness, whether it's Christianity or any religion, hearing that through a set of people that have heard it from someone better or in that succession is so important. Any religion tends to emphasize that point, except for obviously atheists. So that's where I wanted to, I'll pause there and see if devotees wanted to add anything to this, make any comments. I'm sure I've not covered the full part of these two verses. So please, I'll open up for devotees to add anything.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj Prabhupada. Thank you so much for elaborating that, Prabhu. Sorry, just a second. Are you hearing any echo?
No, Mataji, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, you were describing this Narada Muni's qualities. Sorry, just a second. I think
Sure.
Prabhu is hearing from another room. I'm hearing my own voice.
No problem.
Sorry for that.
No problem.
Yeah, you were describing about how Parikshit Maharaj is addressing Narada Muni. That was very nice, the way you have explained this Brahmana, Kodita, and Deva Darshana. So I'm thinking all of us also are hearing from the disciplic succession, from the Guru. So what is really different is that Deva Darshana. Do we really have that audience of the Lord and that revelation? And I was actually connecting to yesterday's morning discussion. Vinod Bihari Prabhu was bringing different kinds of listeners, the superior listeners and inferior listeners. So obviously, if you see Narada Muni's example in our case, the quality of hearing is different.
Yeah.
So by that, improving the quality of hearing, we have the opportunity to hear what we need to, I'm speaking for myself, what I need to do from my side is that quality of listening and how that can, the other point I really loved you bringing. After hearing each of these pastimes, the verses said themselves, and sometimes Prabhupada in his purport says, just hear this attentively, and that's it. You are guaranteed the love of Godhead. And you can actually see Lord Krishna in every page of Bhagavatam. So that's very, very beautiful. So that somehow, increase that faith in, the quality of hearing. Then we can also go there. And the other point Gopal Hari Prabhu was mentioning a few days back about this revealed knowledge, not just acquired or realized, when we can reach that stage of revealed knowledge. So it's connecting to that Deva Darshana, how it can, transform the heart. So we can see in Narada Muni's example, how, whoever he's touching, it's just completely transformed. So that was really nice. I was appreciating. And the other thing I really, it was very, very helpful for me is you're talking about this mental speculators, that me too. Whenever I hear that from Srila Prabhupada, I used to wonder, okay, I get it, but why is he so stressing upon? I mean, it's okay, they're doing something, whatever. So how is that so dangerous? I mean, I couldn't perceive to what extent it can go. The example you mentioned, it's totally visual. I mean, how, someone can completely perceive it totally, off. And that's also, reinforcing my faith in Srila Prabhupada's statements, how we need to go from, starting from Canto 1 gradually to Canto 10 pastimes. Otherwise we are just seeing through that material lens, and you also touched that point. So for me, your whole discussion is so beautiful. Anything Krishna's pastime or his qualities, it's not like what we are seeing here. That's exactly what they're seeing. Okay, the women here are being exploited by men, and that's what is happening with Krishna also. So that was very, very helpful, the example, the whole discussion. I just loved it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Just to maybe elaborate on this, the first point about the quality of Brahmana Kodita and Devadarshana. With Lord Brahma, there was this key thing where he told Narada Muni, don't just pass it on to others, but internally also expand it, like grow that conception in your heart. And I think, we're all hearing, obviously, from our spiritual masters or whoever might be, but I think this improving the quality of listening, but along with that, taking it back and internalizing it the way Brahma told Narada Muni to do, was a very important and amazing thing that enabled Narada Muni to then convey that knowledge further on. It was just something that was coming to my mind as you were mentioning this point. And the last thing I was going to say was hearing the pastimes. It's often said it's important to hear that pastime attentively, like that. There's this emphasis on attention. If you hear it once attentively, then you derive more love for Krishna. So that was another thing that just I was thinking of. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Mataji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. The other day, Gopal Hari Prabhu's talk on the same topic. You felt like there is that live electrical wire somewhere. That much he, tried to, emphasize on the disciplic succession here. And you have further illuminated, and the contrast you provided. I'm so thankful, Amritakali Mataji, put in words what I wanted to say so nicely. It's really shocking, what the other end of the spectrum, what they can do damage. Anyway, Thank you very much. Your class was wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu, for a nice class. So, I mean, when you are talking about the same point, I was remembering how people who doesn't have the complete understanding, they did not hear disciplic succession, try to tweak the messages or whatever they know from the scriptures or what they heard, right, from the other sources. They will apply their own knowledge and try to create a different story out of it.
Yeah.
Remembering few instances which are unmentionable, but so it was very deviated or diverted, right? Because they have that some kind of conception, so they apply that conception to the the Lord and his devotees. For example, Narada Muni, right? So, let us just take Narada Muni open example. People portray it as a person who takes the wrong message, here and there, right? So which is not the right thing. He has a different purpose in doing that, what he's doing, but people doesn't get that.
The way Narada Muni will appear out of nowhere in a situation, and it makes it look as if he's making the situation worse, but in reality he's actually making it better. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's very, very, even Krishna's case, right? That Krishna is there to Kamsa.
So many times in Mahabharata, Krishna has made the situation quote unquote worse, but he's actually improving it. The one that comes to my mind is when Arjuna was about to kill, I think it was Shishupal who had killed his Shishupal or Ashwatthama, I forget the name, who had killed his 5 sons. Ashwatthama, yeah. So then, Krishna was telling Arjuna, kill him, and then his brother Yudhishthira was like, saying, no, don't kill him, forgive him, and Krishna was testing Arjuna, but if you have to read that in detail to see what Krishna's purpose was, what role he was playing in that whole discussion, basically. And so it's so important to hear in that through other devotees instead of just reading that on your own.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I was going to ask you, Lakshmikant Prabhu, that, or anyone for that matter, like, growing up, like I said, I came across many students in college that were in this mental speculation phase, meaning they're reading books on their own and sort of coming up with their own interpretation of what religion is, like what is Christianity, what is ISKCON, what is Islam, and so that is a very delicate and dangerous time to not have someone in discipline succession guiding you. So that, and I saw that in firsthand in front of me multiple times on campus. But I'm curious, in all of your your coworkers, for example, or whatever that might be, do you run into quote unquote these mental speculators who have a take on what Hinduism might be or Krishna consciousness might be? And I'm just curious here.
Yes, Prabhu. Maybe not exactly on this, but Hinduism, Muslim, but they're talking about something from the Ramayana or something from Mahabharata and give their own interpretation, right? About Hanuman, about Sita, or whatever it is. So it's like a disturbing situations, right? So when few people get together and do something which is not a nice thing, but then they will be talking about these subjects also, right? So when the group is there, I think I don't know, maybe the question, I know these discussions will come, Prabhu, especially when the Indian background is there from the but when the other group is there, maybe they will talk about very high level, they will not get into a deeper discussions. I didn't into that. When the Americans or Westerners were there, I didn't get into deeper discussions with them, but when the Indian co-workers are there, these discussions would come, right? Just get the Krishna's picture on my phone or whatever it is, right? So so the different things will come. My only point, sometimes it is disturbing, right? Where it is going to go when the other people are in what mood, and I try to ask, I will tell them directly not to discuss at that time.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's disturbing. I mean, I did a couple of times, but when they're one-on-one, I mean, it is much better to tell what is right, what is wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So in that situation, we can just give I mean, what I did, yeah, that is not what it is. So, I mean, I just give a very brief so that people will not get so much disturbed, because when there is I mean, 6, 7 people are there and you're alone, it will be a problem. So because
right, that's true.
Yeah, so that kind of situations I came across, Prabhu. But yeah, I just give a saying that though that is not the correct understanding, we can discuss later.
Yeah.
Right. So then I talk to the person individually and then convey what is right understanding.
That's
So
the right one. Yeah.
that's what I was. I don't know if that is what you are asking. Or
no, that yeah. I mean, like I said, I saw so much of it when I was in college. I was curious if you know as you work more, if you
college is a little difficult, right? I mean, especially I don't. I mean, yeah, college was a little difficult because people try to. I mean, that time we were all very young, right? I mean, people. Every one of us like somewhere, right? So they don't think that you know something or you're hearing from some personality who is very great, right? I mean, we might be small, but yeah, we are hearing from this cyclic succession coming from Krishna. We know what it is, but the people doesn't understand, take it lightly. I mean, other people also not very mature, so it's very hard to discuss unless the other person is ready to listen. In the college I had, I mean, it's not going to be easy. So it is all going to be. Unless again it is in a gang group, it is big problem. So always.
Absolutely.
I had this very interesting experience just recently. The Onam was one of the Kerala they were celebrating, and they were telling the story of Bali Maharaj, like based on their local, he is religious, and he was telling Bali Maharaj, this thing happened, that thing happened. It's not exactly like Srimad Bhagavatam, but I was just listening happily. At least they're talking something. And then this other colleague comes and says, okay, who is the first incarnation, second incarnation? The other person was asking, who is considerably newer, probably not aware much. And this person was explaining, oh, actually the first incarnation was the fish, and then the tortoise, and then this. So actually it proves the theory of evolution, if you see the incarnations. I was like, what? I mean, that like totally twisting the thing, and they're proving this is how from one to other. And it's actually proven, and people have done research, and this is a publication you can actually go and read. I was about to stop them, and then the extent they're going, I said, okay, fine. I just walked out of there.
Yeah.
It's just, as you're telling this example, me too, it's the extent to which they can take it is like so much.
Definitely.
And the problem with them, as I was seeing, he is so confident that he knew everything. It's like, as if I have read everything and understood everything so thoroughly. I'm not like blindly believing. I'm so knowledgeable. I was like, wow. And then I was feeling so grateful for Prabhupada. I have my own questions and speculations and stuff when I read Prabhupada books. But when I'm hearing these things, I'm like, oh, Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, thank you for protecting me from all that.
And by the way, like it happens with other religions also. Like, I'm the first one to say when I've read the Bible, I've had my own fair of questions, and I know it's because I haven't read that under someone who knows, for example, what the Bible is. And so it happens with every religion, happens with normal material knowledge that's out there, like also. So, yeah.
I don't know how much time we have now, but I'm always curious to hear from, you guys who have grown up. I'm sure you would have gone through your own share of questioning, is this really the thing, to seeing outside and then coming to, the conclusion that, yes, this is the right path. I just wanted to hear some of those experiences.
You mean like if Krishna consciousness is the right thing for me, per se? Like that? Yeah. Definitely, Mataji. I've had my fair share of questioning myself. Is this the right scripture? Is this the right thing for me? And things like that. But I guess one thing I'll say is when I was on college campus, there was a Prabhupada disciple living on campus, Pitashara Prabhu and Danikili Mataji. And I had devotee roommates like in college my whole time. So I feel like I was quite protected from like we had regular bhakti rikshas and morning programs where I could ask these questions and get clarifications many times. That was sort of one aspect that kept me protected. And the other part I felt was that like there was such a big peer group of all of us that we grew up together that kind of helped motivate each other to stay in Krishna consciousness, even if those doubts came. We would address it at times with others or with people that we had a relationship with, like senior devotees that we had a relationship with. So I think those things just kept, I don't know, stabilizing it for us to stay close to Krishna consciousness as much as possible. And I know all of us are very grateful for how much we received it back then and how much they continued to give it to us during college, post-college. But yeah, I mean, Mataji, we've had so many discussions on our doubts with devotees like Nityananda Prabhu or Premananda Mataji or Jai Jagannath Prabhu, so many discussions on doubts. But because those devotees were there to answer and clarify those doubts, we were in Maharaj himself, we were, I feel like, able to somewhat stay protected. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining on Saturday. Hope you all have a great day ahead, and we'll see you later. Hare Krishna, everyone.